Good evening, everybody. Good evening, and thanks for coming to our Program of Studies night. I'm really excited about the turnout here, so thank you very much. My name is Mark Talbot. I'm the principal of the high school. And in a moment, I'll be turning the microphone over to Eric Meerbach, who was our Director of Guidance. And together tonight, we are looking forward to welcoming you, the parents of the 8th graders, the incoming 9th graders, and I see some 9th graders here as well, some rising 9th graders, so welcome to you. And we have revamped the night tonight in an effort to kind of energize it and to prevent stagnation, right? Few things are worse than sitting in an auditorium being overwhelmed with PowerPoint slides and text. And so the agenda tonight then will be done in 2 phases, right? And right now, this is phase 1, okay, that overview of our program of studies, okay? And this section should probably take, you know, maybe 30, 35 minutes, maybe a little more or less depending on questions and things of that nature. But we will talk here in this portion about the overview of the entire program of studies, okay? That includes graduation requirements, the typical scope and sequence for the various content areas, GPA and what that means for your child and how we can maybe help shape the GPA. We'll talk about the various pathways here at Pembroke High School, pathways that are really dependent upon your child's interests, okay, career interests. And then we will finally get down to the nitty-gritty, the course selection process, okay? So there were some handouts on the table on the way in. If you didn't grab them, don't worry about that. You can get them on the way out. But one of those handouts is an explanation of exactly how you do log in to select courses. I'm sure most of your children know how to do that, and perhaps you do as well. We just want to make sure we have that there just in case. Phase 2 of the night will be the new part, right? Where you people are actually up and moving around, where you get to maybe interact a little bit more at your own pace. So our content supervisors are located in the following classrooms in our science wing. And if you don't know how to get there, please don't worry. We have students from our National Honor Society out there to show you where they are. And the information on this slide right here is on one of those handouts. So you don't have to worry about memorizing these locations. But we have representatives from the English department, the math department, the science department, social studies, foreign language, and visual and performing arts. And they're in the design classrooms, and it's a drop-in session. There's no time limit there. There's no bells ringing. You will rotate through there at your own leisure. If you want to drill down with some specific questions about courses or expectations, that's your chance to do so. You certainly can leave whenever you'd like, including when we're done with this phase 1. But we do hope that you take advantage of phase 2 and get down to the science wing and talk to those supervisors, all right? So our program of studies is currently on our school's webpage, okay? So that's the home page of the school's webpage, and right there you'll see a link in the bottom left-hand corner there for the program of studies, and that's how you want to access that very important document, okay? You can also get it by accessing the guidance page as well, okay? If you click on the guidance top tab, you'll be able to get the program of studies there as well. But if I could impart one piece of advice to you, and I'm going to try to impart a couple pieces of advice to you tonight, but one of them would be to really examine that program of studies. It's a comprehensive document. It's certainly not fluffy. There's some substance to it, but it takes you through our expectations, our course selection process, each individual content area, and the flow and the scope and sequence of those content areas. So please, read that through, and that way that you can help your child develop the best program of studies for him or her. And at this time, I will turn the microphone over to Mr. Meerbach, who will take you through the rest of the phase 1 agenda. Mr. Meerbach.
Thank you. It's good to see some familiar faces. I was down at the middle school the last couple of days doing course selection presentations, so I recognize a bunch of faces of students I've been speaking with the last couple of days. So I'm glad you guys can make it out, and the parents as well. I just want to go over the graduation requirements here at the high school. It's 4 years of English, 4 years of math, 3 years of science, including biology and chemistry. So all incoming freshmen take biology. And then 3 years of history, including World History 2 and U.S. History, and 4 years of PE and Wellness. So coming in freshman year, you'll be taking genre studies for English, Algebra 1 or Geometry, and in all likelihood, Biology, World History 2, and then our Grade 9 Wellness. And then in terms of MCAS, those are graduation requirements as well here at the high school. So in freshman year, you'll take the Biology MCAS, and in sophomore year, you take the Math and English. We also have a community service requirement of 40 hours over the 4 years at the high school. It's something that is a requirement, and in the seminars down at the middle school today, I was kind of talking to the students about that, the importance of getting involved early and just kind of spacing that requirement out over the 4 years if you can, as there's always a group of seniors that doesn't take that requirement seriously and spends a lot of their April vacation doing volunteer work. So if you can space that over the 4 years, that would be a much better way to go. And then those are the requirements. Now, if you've noticed, foreign language isn't listed as a requirement, but if you're considering a 4-year college, it is a requirement. I'd say about 90% of 4-year colleges and all Mass state schools require 2 years of a foreign language. So that's one thing that you want to think about when you're registering for 9th grade courses. Do I want to take a foreign language in my freshman year? You don't have to. There's pros and cons of doing it. You may want to think about it just for momentum and not having that year off of the foreign language. And then if you want to go further into the sequence, into, say, an AP or a Spanish 4 honors, you need to start that foreign language in freshman year and not wait. So be thinking about that, and then also what your post-high school plans are too, in terms of whether you want to take a foreign language. I'm just going to go over the scope and sequence of core courses here at the high school and what we offer. So the first one's English. Like I said, everyone's going to either take genre studies, college prep, or honors in their freshman year. And then grade 10, you go into World Lit. Grade 11 is American Lit. And then grade 12, there's a lot of options on the table. There's senior seminars that are really popular at the high school here. So seniors take 2 semester English courses in a certain area of study. It could be poetry, it could be sports lit, it could be survival and adventure. There's 6 or 7 different themes that you can pick from the seminars. So the seniors do like those seminars, and they are popular. Or you could take an AP Lit or an AP Language course, or we also offer Brit Lit honors. And if you look to the right, you can see the electives we offer. So starting in grade 9, you can take Intro to Journalism as an elective. And then in grade 10, you can take Editorial Journalism, Speech and Debate, Creative Writing. And then grade 11 and grade 12, you can take any of those electives. In terms of history, when you're coming in, you're going to be taking World History 2. And then U.S. History 1 in 10th grade. And then in 11th grade, you'll take either U.S. History 2 or AP US. And then in 12th grade, there's no specific requirement for a history course per se. But a lot of students will take an AP Psych, or they'll take a US Government, or they'll take a half year of psychology, a half year of sociology as a 4th year of a history requirement. And then again, on the left, or on the right, you can see the electives that we do offer. So in grade 9, you'd be able to take economics, genocide and history, or street law. And street law is basically an intro to law course. So in terms of math, there's 3 different pathways in math. One is where you start in geometry. The second one you start in algebra. And the third one is an applied integrated math sequence called AIM. So whatever pathway you start in, you move along in the sequence. So if you start in pathway number 3, you end up in calculus, or a calculus level type class, and then the second pathway you'd end up at pre-calc, and then the third pathway is similar to the second pathway, but it's more of the core curriculum. So applied integrated math 1 is kind of the core curriculum of algebra 1. So it's not as expansive as algebra 1, but it deals more with the core concepts. And in terms of electives, again, there's, for especially 9th graders, you have a couple electives. Exploring computer science programming and Exploring computer science robotics are both electives you can take in your freshman year. And then as you progress, there's AP courses that you can take in computer science and statistics. And I'll come back to the math requirement in a second as I talk about science. So science in grade 9, you're going to take biology freshman year, chemistry sophomore year, and then in your junior year, this is kind of where things shift a little. You could go into physics, which a lot of students do, but to go into physics, you have to be in that math pathway number 2 or number 3. So you need to be at least in Algebra 2 to take physics in your junior year is what I'm trying to say. If you're taking AIM 3, you're not going to have the right math background to be taking physics. So those students would be taking marine biology and either forensics or zoology with that. So if you are a student that is maybe in that first pathway and you know you want to take physics, you need to talk to your school counselor or talk to our math curriculum coordinator and find out how you can shift to a different pathway, whether that's doing really well in the class or whether that's taking an additional course over the summer or figuring out a way where you can advance into a different pathway. And then in grade 12, we have a lot of flexibility. We have an anatomy and physiology course that's very popular. We have AP Bio, AP Chem, and AP Physics courses. We have many electives. Freshman year, there aren't any science electives available, but starting in sophomore year, we have marine biology and zoology. And then once you get to junior year, you pretty much, except for AP Physics C, you're pretty much able to take any elective you want. We have forensics, environmental engineering, as I said, anatomy and physiology, AP Bio, and AP Chem. And then foreign language. Like I said, not a requirement here at the high school, but if you're thinking 4-year college, it certainly is a requirement in that respect. So we have Spanish, French, and Latin as our languages, and we go up through the AP level in each one of the languages. So depending on what your middle school language is, you might be starting at Spanish 2 or French 2 or Latin 2 if you're taking those courses in the middle school. If you decided you took French for a couple of years at the middle school and you want to switch to Spanish, you certainly can do that, but you'd be starting at Spanish 1 and may not be able to reach that AP part of the sequence. So just something to think about. Okay, grade point average. So PHS at Pembroke High School, our GPA is weighted and it's on a 5.0 model. So what that means is, so weighted GPA is basically a GPA that's, you get more credit for the level of the class you take. So if you take if you get a B and a CP class, I can't do this one at a time thing, I'm sorry, Mark. I gotta go through, I gotta back her up, yeah. Mr. Talbot had the slides come out one at a time, or the bullets come out one at a time, and it was just kind of messing me up in my head here. So I had just to go right through that. So we have, our GPA is weighted on a 5.0 model, and all courses count towards a GPA at Pembroke High School. So if you have a B and you're in a college prep English class, that is a 3.0 in your GPA. If that's an honors class and you have a B, that's a 3.5. And if it's an AP class and it's a B, that's a 4.0. So you get a little more credit for the level of the course that you're in. And so there is some value in that. It's not just, showing the courses on your transcript, but you do get rewarded in your GPA. There's a sliding scale to that, so that helps when you're getting A's and B's, but if it's not, if it's below a B level, then that might not be as helpful anymore. But we do weight the courses here. Another thing I wanted to talk about is the pathways here at the high school. So a question we get a lot in guidance from students around course selection is, a student has a particular interest in business or engineering or something else, and they're not sure what courses to take based on those interests. So we created some pathways. And it doesn't mean that you have to take these courses or that you're locked into any particular pathway, but it gives students an idea of what courses you should be thinking about and considering based on your interests, based on your strengths. So we created 5 general pathways: engineering, law and government, nursing, life science, business, and liberal arts, just to give students some perspective. So I'll go over each one of these. The first one is engineering science pathway. So this pathway, you want to focus in on the math and the science courses first. Physics is a must if you want to go into engineering. So again, if you're in a certain math sequence, you want to make sure that you're in the right math sequence to take physics as a junior or a senior. If you look at the math pathway, there's Algebra 1 and Geometry. Algebra 1 doesn't make it to pre-calc, and you should really be in calculus if you're applying to competitive engineering programs. And so that's another thing to think about. If you're starting in an Algebra 1, you can't get to calculus by your senior year. So is there a summer course that you can take? Is there an opportunity for you to advance in the sequence? It doesn't mean that you can't get into an engineering program if you are through pre-calc, but if you're applying to competitive programs, it puts you in the best position. And then we have AP Chem and AP Physics, which are really good classes to take in your junior or your senior year. And then the electives to the right there are certainly electives that you can choose from to kind of enhance that pathway. In terms of law and government, kind of goes the other way. So you're looking more at the humanities, you're looking more at English and history as courses you want to emphasize. We have AP US History, we have a lot of AP History courses. So we have AP US, AP Government and Politics, AP Psych, AP Euro, so there's 4 right there that we have. We have our AP Language and AP Lit and English courses. And again, you know, a lot of it's about taking core courses 3 or 4 years, but emphasizing the humanities is important. For electives, we have street law, which I said is like an intro to law class, so it's a great way to explore that field if you're a freshman and you're thinking about that. We have intro to economics, speech and debate, which can be really good. And then electives like sociology and psychology as well. And then for the nursing life sciences pathway, so students thinking about nursing, physical therapy, occupational therapy, career paths like that. Again, you're looking at more towards the math and science. The one difference between this pathway in terms of the math is you don't necessarily have to be through calculus. A lot of schools are more interested in seeing you take statistics in your senior year if you're interested in life science. So it's not all about going further into that sequence, but you can take statistics, and that's sometimes better than calculus depending on the program you're applying to. We also have a couple good science courses you can take. AP Bio is a real good one for that, and then Anatomy and Physiology is also a great course you can take. And then, of course, we have our electives too with forensics, marine bio, zoology, et cetera. Then we have a business pathway. So business, you know, you'd be surprised, but math is kind of important for a business pathway. You might not think that, but if you're interested in majoring in business, a lot of colleges will look at your math closely. So you do want to advance in that math sequence as much as you can. Foreign language can sometimes be beneficial, especially if you're looking at international business or something global. Being further along in that sequence can be important if you're a business major. We have AP Gov and AP Psych, which are good classes as well. And then we have a lot of business electives. So for freshmen, exploring business and intro to economics are available for you. And then as you know, by sophomore year, you can take accounting, and then junior and senior year, we have financial literacy, intro to marketing, economics 2, and then we have a Deca program, strategic marketing and entrepreneurship. That's a full year class that's really geared towards students that are interested in business, planning to major in business, and it's a really good hands-on project-based course. And then there's just the liberal arts pathway. So that's just, you know, for students that want to try a little of everything and they don't have a particular interest, which is totally fine. And you're not going to, a lot of people don't know, and we don't expect you to know exactly what you want to do. So if you're not sure, then just taking those core courses and progressing in the sequence is fine. And then just trying electives from all the disciplines that I mentioned before and just kind of exploring your interests. So that's kind of an overview of the pathways, and I'll Bring it back to Mr. Talbot.
Thanks, Mr. Buck. Everyone okay? Doing all right? Got about 5 slides left, okay, and then we're going to move around. So, again, everything that Mr. Mirbach just talked about is in that program of studies, okay? So that if you feel as though you'd like to go and review a pathway or a scope and sequence in a certain content area, it's all right there, okay? I do want to talk to you about, really, though, the nuts and bolts of course selection, and that's really why you're all here, is to understand not only how to do it, but maybe what your child should be selecting. And so, starting on February 13th and going till March 1st, and that's the Wednesday after February break, teachers are in the process of making recommendations right now for your child for next year. Okay, so we've got another probably week and a half or so for teachers to kind of input those recommendations. Now, they make those recommendations based on their experiences with your child for the past 6 months or so. Okay, we've asked the teacher to make an earnest assessment of every child, balancing potential with what's really happening right now. Okay, and so those teachers are really making recommendations with your child's best interest in mind, certainly, in their professional opinion. And they don't take that lightly. For some teachers, a very painstaking process, okay, where they're really trying to analyze each student and try to find the best fit for him or for her. After March 1st, that's when the window opens up for families and students to select their schedule for next year, okay? And that window is going to be from March 1st to March 8th. That's when you guys will have the keys to the car, and you'll have the chance to log on and select your child's program of studies for next year. And in fact, the portal will open up at 4 p.m. on March 1st, that Wednesday, okay? So you've got a week, okay, or so to do that, to have conversations with your child, right, to look at those recommendations and make some good decisions. Now, to do that, your child must log on to PowerSchool through their portal, okay? They all should have their password and login information by now, all right? I know at the high school, our kids do, and they're on the PowerSchool account an awful lot, maybe too much, obsessing about grades and things of that nature, which is a whole different night and a whole different presentation, right? If you need login information, okay, please contact your child's guidance counselor at the middle school, and they'll help you get that information. Now, students will have the ability to select the courses at the level for which they've been recommended, okay, and then they will have the option of selecting some electives. Okay? Now, students must select at the high school between 24 and 28 credits. Our full-year courses, our core courses are 4-credit courses. All right, our half-year courses, our elective courses are 2 credits per course. So that, just work with you now for quick math. If your child selects 5 core courses, English, math, science, social studies, and a foreign language, that's 20 credits right there. And then they would have room to select 2 elective courses to get them to 24. Or they could pick a 6th full-year course based on their interests, and that gets them 24, and then an elective gets them 26. Okay? So there's some flexibility there with that. But they must have between 24 and 28 credits. Now, for the first time, we are allowing students to elect to take a study hall. All right? We've been having a lot of discussions about that, and we personally feel it's important for kids to have that time during the day to get some work done. It's a non-credit course, okay, but there's still room to do that and get it to 24, all right? We don't give a student credit for that, okay? Now, a study hall is a semester-based course. It's a half-year course, so all students will be asked to select alternatives to their primary courses. So you'll have a chance to select a study hall once as a primary course if your child opts for that, and then for a secondary alternate selection, you could also select study hall. And that way there, we now know you want a study hall first semester and second semester. That's how we'll make that distinction. Okay? Those are family decisions that you can make with your child at home. We're here to support that as best we can. Now, I said earlier that your child will be able to select courses based on what the teacher has recommended for a level. Okay? And as I said before, that those teachers are making those recommendations with what they feel is the student's best interest in mind, okay? If you disagree with a level recommendation and you think your child should be in a higher level, even a lower level, if you wish to override that recommendation, the first step in the process is to contact the recommending teacher. okay? At the high school here, the guidance staff will not speak, and really, they don't think it's the best practice to talk to parents about that without having a conversation with the recommending teacher first. Okay, that's the person making the recommendation. It's with him or her that those conversations should happen, okay? If after that conversation you are still disagreeing with the recommendation for the level, then we ask you to pursue the override process, and it's a good process. It's pretty thorough, and we think it works, okay? And so the first step for that is to acquire an override form that lives in the Pembroke High School guidance office. It's in the high school guidance office, okay? And there's a form that gets filled out, and it gets returned to guidance, and then that form gets delivered to the content supervisor. So if you're overriding a math level recommendation, we will get your form with your input to Mark Duffy, who was our math content supervisor, okay? He then will contact you undoubtedly. He will contact the teacher undoubtedly, and he will render a decision based on whether or not that override can happen. But that's how that process works, okay? If you truly believe that you want your child to go to a different level other than what's been recommended. Now, those override forms are due by May 1st, okay, of this year. And we hold that deadline hard and true, and we ask that you understand and recognize why we do that, and that's because we want then to build a schedule so we can get your child's schedule to him or her before the summer vacation. So the May 1st deadline will give us enough time, okay, to build a schedule for all of our students and get that out to kids before summer break, okay? And we want to get it out to students before summer break so that everyone has an opportunity to see what's coming at them in September, and they can make plans for summer work, summer reading, and to perhaps make any changes at that time, okay? So that when we talk about selecting a program of studies for your child, we ask you to make those selections with care. This is a really important step, okay, in the process. This meeting and then the courses you'll select in the next week or so. If we do our work on the front end, okay, selecting a program of studies for our children, then what's going to happen in the fall will be far more smooth and much more successful if we do it on the front end, okay? So please, at this point, select a program with care. And we're asking you to find that balance, right, between challenging our children, getting out of their comfort zones, but yet creating a program of studies that's going to lead to success. Okay? We hate to see children create a program of studies that is challenging, and I mean challenging, super. We love that, right? But can we do a realistic self-assessment to make sure that we are not setting up a child to not do well? And that's the balance, right? And it's difficult, and sometimes those conversations are difficult to have. But we're asking that if you really do a sincere and earnest self-assessment, let's find that balance, okay? Because we want kids doing well, and we want kids challenging themselves, all right? Where is the balance there, okay? I think the guidance counselor has a big part in that. I would encourage your children to speak with guidance counselors during this process. We have asked guidance counselors to talk to students who are perhaps scheduling challenging schedules for next year, all right? Just to check in one more time, let's just make sure this is in everyone's best interest, okay? Because once we select courses, and once the schedules come out in September, it's really difficult to make changes after that point. Not impossible, certainly not impossible, but it's more challenging because the course selection, what's happening right now, what your children are doing right now, determines many things. It determines the master schedule, right? It determines what classes we run and don't run. And if we only have 5 kids sign up for a course right now in the spring, well, then we're not going to run it because we can't afford to dedicate a full-time teacher to a class of 5 kids. But if we have maybe 11 kids or 10 kids, we would run it, right? So what's happening here right now helps us really build our master schedule. It helps us determine how many sections of a class we're going to run. How many AP bios do we need, right? How many World History 2s do we need? We figure that out based on what you're doing right now. We develop class sizes based on what's happening right now. We develop teacher workload and balance those schedules for equity so that if a teacher is teaching AP Bio and has 12 kids and then another teacher teaching AP Bio and has 25, well, we try to balance that so that they maybe both have 17, okay? So when we build the schedule based on course selection, a lot of things happen. And that's why we ask you to take it seriously now, okay? Because once we pass those schedules out, changing them is not impossible, but it's very hard to do. And so we will change schedules if there's been some sort of mistake or if there's been some sort of reflection that says, you know what, maybe this is not a good idea. And so when possible, when we pass those schedules out in June, when possible, we will make reasonable attempts to accommodate requests to change between June and the end of August, right? That last week of school in June, all through the summer, and particularly the last week of the summer before school starts. And I don't know what date that is yet. I would have put it up here. I don't know what the first day of school is for next year, right? But if I did, I would have put it here. But the 5 days prior to the first day of school, our guidance staff is back from summer vacation, and they're in their offices, and they are talking to kids about schedules, and they're making changes then when reasonable, okay? But once the first day of school starts, it is really hard. It's really challenging to accommodate requests at that point, okay? And so that's why we ask you to do the work beforehand, consider what you're scheduling for your child, and if we do want to make changes, we do so before school starts next year. Once the school year starts, we do make changes to schedules, but only through the placement review process. And at that point, we change schedules if a kid has been woefully misplaced, by us primarily, because we don't want to see kids fail. We want to see kids succeed. And if it has become patently obvious to all that this kid's in the wrong class or the wrong level, we will make a change because it's in the best interest of kids. But what we can't do at that point is change schedules because I don't like that teacher or my friend's not in that class or, you know what, this is kind of boring to me or, you know, that's a different conversation and it's harder to do, right? So there are two phases to our placement review process, right? The first phase happens the day that progress reports grades close. We close those grades up. We ask teachers to take a look at their grades and to identify students who you think perhaps are misplaced. And we do that again at the end of term 1 report cards. So there are 2 chances to vet student performance during the first quarter of their freshman year because we want to make sure that kids are in the right place. But changing a schedule due to placement is different than changing a schedule due to I changed my mind. It's a different conversation. Okay, and I'm just asking you to understand that, all right, going forward. And so when we do placement review, if the teacher and the student and the parents agree that this student is doing everything he or she can do to meet with success, but yet isn't being successful, okay, and by that I mean we are putting forth an earnest effort, we are turning in all of our assignments in a timely manner, we are consistently seeking extra help. If we're doing all these things and the student is not being successful, we will absolutely make the placement change at that point, all right? It's important that we do so. Okay, but that has to be an agreement between the teacher and the student. The teacher has to say, yes, indeed, despite his or her best efforts, this student is not succeeding right now, let's make a change. And we'll be happy to do that, okay? So with that, I will turn it over to you folks if you have any questions of me. And I realize that you might have lots of them, and some of them may be better suited to the content supervisors, right? If you want to drill down with specific questions about the content in those areas, or about the scope and sequence, I invite you to ask them. But until that time, I'd be happy to field a question or two here right now. Go ahead. So the course selection, the guide for courses which they can select? Is that what you mean? So it's in the program of studies, which is on the website there, which I alluded to earlier. So if you go to our website, that link where I showed you earlier, you can grab all those courses there. Not right now, no. It's a copious document, so we didn't print up a whole bunch of them right now for tonight, no. No, we would, no, upon request, I suppose we would, yes, but there's no plan to print them out in mass, no. You're welcome, sure. That's right, other hand over here, go ahead, sir, yeah. What nurse is it? So our nurse is Mrs. Cameron. She's a fantastic person, and I'm sure she'd be happy to meet you and help in any way. She's outstanding. Sir? So the window for that right now is started right now. They're already doing it, and they'll be done on March 1st. So when you log into the portal, you'll see on the screen there, you'll see what they've recommended. Okay? Yes, ma'am. Awesome question. So physics is not a graduation requirement, okay? Not every kid has the math strength to succeed in a course like that, okay? So of the 3 years of science, one does not have to be physics. And your second question is what? I'm sorry. Yep. So all of our science classes are lab sciences, including that one. Yes, it is, yep. Correct. Yep, yep. Yes, ma'am. Boy, that is an awesome question. And the answer right now is there is a waiver process by which kids can be waived the graduation requirement PE. And one of the things that we would consider is if they play a sport. Yes. Yeah. I'd like you to, in the name of transparency, I'm looking to maybe change that a little bit. But as of right now, that's how it stands right now. So, I'm sorry, so the 9th grade intro to PE, Mr. Miracle told me, is a requirement, though, so they can't waive out of that. Okay? Thank you. It's a great question. Thank you. Yes, ma'am. So, that's a great question for the content supervisors. I can speak in general terms, okay? So obviously in the honors there's a bit more rigor, there's a bit more writing. I would say each night you could expect your student to spend, you know, a bit more time with the studies, maybe a half an hour to an hour, maybe additionally, you know, with the work level there, okay? Expectations around higher order thinking skills in the honors classes, I think, you know, we're doing less, you know, comprehension, less even application, and more, you know, perhaps synthesis and types of questions, okay? But those are questions that the specific content supervisors can really give you specific responses to, okay? If I could take a moment to shamefully plug another night coming up in the spring for the parents of 8th graders, okay? So in the spring, we have a step-up night for the parents of 8th graders. We talk about things in terms of the student handbook and the process and stuff like that. We are revamping that night as well, and we're calling that Parent University. We're going to run a Parent University here, where again, we're going to have some movement and some round-robin kind of conversations where you can kind of, you know, at your own discretion, your own judgment, really kind of talk to people representing various areas of our school. We'll have co-curricular people there. We'll have, certainly we'll have some academic folks here. We'll have athletic folks here where you can kind of move around and talk to folks that you really want to get an idea of how it works here, what our culture is like here. So when you start seeing some advertisements for Parent University, I am encouraging you all to come to get a flavor of what's happening here and spread the word that that'll be happening sometime in May, okay? I appreciate your time. You've been great. This is an awesome turnout and very enthusiastic turnout. So at this time, you are free to move out into the lobby. We have NHS students there who are going to show you where the content supervisors are. Thank you all very much, and best of luck to you. Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming. In the interest of kind of keeping things on track a little bit, we should probably get started. I'm sure folks will be struggling in, which is totally fine. But thank you for coming, and welcome to our Program of Studies overview. My name is Mark Talbot, the principal of the high school here, and in a moment I'm going to turn the microphone over to Eric Meerbach, who is our Director of Guidance, and he's going to really talk about most of the nuts and bolts of the Program of Studies. But tonight we have revamped the night from past years, and we'll do it in 2 phases. And we're doing that, I think, to kind of break up the monotony and the stagnant feeling of sitting in front of a PowerPoint presentation with text and bullets for long periods of time. So the first phase will be that stagnant PowerPoint presentation, but it'll be shorter, right? And so that phase is happening right now, right? So Eric is going to talk about graduation requirements. He'll talk about the typical scope and sequences for the various content areas. He'll talk about GPA and what that means for your child with weighted classes. And he's going to talk about the various pathways we have here, those pathways that are general, certainly, but they are trying to be they're geared towards student interest. And then I'll come back up and talk about the course selection process overall and schedule changes and things of that nature. The second phase, and that'll happen maybe in about 25 or 30 minutes from now, depending upon questions and everything else. The second phase will allow you to get up and move around a little bit. Our content supervisors are all right now in the science wing. And if you don't know what that is, don't worry, we've got National Honor Society students here ready to take you down there and guide you down there. But they're in 6 classrooms down in that science wing. And as we speak, they're fielding questions from the 8th grade parents who just heard this presentation, some bit ago. By the time we're done talking, the 8th grade parents will have rotated out and you guys will rotate in. And that's just pure drop-in. You guys will, based on your own decisions, you'll stop in and talk to content supervisors. You'll maybe ask questions that are specific to you and your child. You may choose to not go to any of them. You may choose to go to all of them. You may choose to go to some of them. Whatever you decide to do, you do. It's meant to be conversational there, not by appointment, not by a bell rotating us through. It's up to you guys. But we have representatives from those 6 departments that you see on the screen there, and don't worry about memorizing that. It was on a handout on the way in. If you did not get it on the way in, you can get it on the way out as well, explaining where each teacher will be. Okay. And so this night is about giving you an overview of our program of studies, so you can help your child select courses in the next couple of weeks. Select them wisely. And just so that you know, our program of studies is already up on the website. That's a picture of our homepage right there, and that link in the bottom left-hand corner that says program of studies, that is, you click on that link and it will be right there in PDF form. You can also get it by going to the guidance website, top tab guidance website. If you go to that link, you'll see the program of studies also embedded there as well. Okay, and so with that then, I will turn it over to Mr. Meerbach, and he'll take you through the program of studies. Thank you.
All right, so I'm just going to go over the graduation requirements real quick. You guys might be familiar with them, but I'm just going to review them. So at Pembroke High School, we require 4 years of English, 4 years of math, including math in your senior year, 3 years of science, including biology and chemistry, 3 years of history, including world history and U.S. history, and then 4 years of PE or wellness. We have our MCAS exams, depending on the grade your child is in. Biology is in freshman year, and then math and English are in spring and sophomore year. And then we have our community service requirement. It's 40 hours community service. We track that requirement in guidance through forms that verify how many hours you volunteered for, and it is something that we do track in guidance, and it is an actual requirement that we do hold students accountable for. If you'll notice, there is no foreign language requirement, so I don't know if that's something that your son or daughter is currently taking. I know most students do take a foreign language at the high school because it is a requirement at most four-year colleges, but if college was something that your son or daughter was interested in, then you really should be taking at least 2 years of a foreign language. So I'm just going to go over kind of the scope and sequence of the core courses. First one being English. Grade 9, we have genre studies. Grade 10 is world lit. Grade 11 is American lit. And then in grade 12, there's a lot of options. You can take an AP language, AP literature. There's a British literature that's offered that sometimes runs, sometimes doesn't. But we also have senior seminars, which are extremely popular with our 12th graders, and those are half-year semester English courses. So there's 2 semester English courses that you take senior year in a certain strand. So it could be poetry, it could be Shakespeare, it could be sports lit, survival and adventure. Those are just a few that I can think of off the top of my head. So that's the kind of core curriculum you take for English. And then for electives, there's a few English electives starting, particularly in grade 10, but in grade 9 you can take intro journalism, but starting in grade 10 you can take speech and debate, creative writing, and editorial journalism if you've taken the intro. For history, there's 3 years of history required. Like I said, everyone takes world history too, and then a 2-year sequence of U.S. history. So that can be US1 and US2 or US1 and AP US. And then in 12th grade, there's no specific requirement or path, but we do have significant options in terms of AP courses. We have an AP Government and Politics, AP Psychology, AP European History. All as options. Students also take Psychology and Sociology, each for a half year, to fulfill a fourth year of history. And then we have a lot of electives in history as well. Economics is very popular, genocide and history. Our street law class is extremely popular too. In math, we have the 3 pathways in math. We have the first pathway is applied integrated math. The second one would be starting with Algebra 1, and the third one starts in geometry in freshman year, and then you kind of move along in the sequence. So depending on where you're at, where you start is kind of where you can end up. So students that start in the third pathway end up in calculus or AP stats, and the second pathway is more pre-calc. You could still do AP stats or an AQR class, which we have. And our applied integrated math pathway is kind of a core, is similar to pathway number 2, but it's more of like the core foundations of those subjects. And in terms of electives, we have a lot of AP computer science electives that start in sophomore year that students can take, and the exploring computer science electives starting in freshman year. And for science, biology is the freshman course, science course everyone takes, and sophomore year is chemistry. And then in grade 11, things switch up a little bit. You can go one of 2 ways. You can take physics, which if you're in math pathway number 2 or number 3, which would put you in algebra 2 or pre-calc in junior year, you would traditionally take physics. Or you can take marine biology and another one of the electives, either zoology or forensics, and make a third year of science that way with 2 of the semester courses. And you can do that in any pathway, but if you're in pathway number 1, you really are not able to take physics because you don't have the math background. So if you are a student that's interested in taking physics, you need to know that. You need to be through algebra 2 to be taking physics. And in terms of electives, we have a lot of options for students in grade 12 with AP Bio, AP Chem, AP Physics. We have anatomy and physiology, and then a whole bunch of electives with forensics, zoology, marine biology, environmental engineering. And foreign language, we offer Spanish, French, and Latin, as you probably know already. And then again, depending on where you start is where you finish in the sequence. But AP is where you can end up if you wanted to pursue the furthest you wanted to go in a foreign language. Again, 2 years is the expectation for most colleges. So if you are looking at a 4-year college, 2 years is the minimum, and doesn't mean you should stop at 2 years, but 3 or 4 years can be beneficial as well. So it's pretty straightforward, I think. All right. In terms of grade point average, Pembroke High School has a weighted 5.0 GPA model, and all Pembroke High School courses count towards your GPA. And to explain it, as an example, if you have a B in a CP junior English class, that's a 3.0, and that's just a standard weight. B is a 3.0. I think we're all familiar with that. So, but a B in an honors junior English class is a 3.5. And then again, a B in an AP junior English class is a 4.0 in your GPA. So you can kind of see how that can benefit you, not only taking the harder courses, but if you do well in them, it helps you in terms of your GPA as well. And then in terms of pathways at the high school, one of the questions we get a lot of guidance from students is they're interested in certain areas, but they don't know what that translates into in terms of classes they should be taking at the high school. So we created some pathways, just 5 general pathways that a lot of students fall under that would be helpful for a student to know, and a parent to know for that matter, in terms of what classes your son or daughter should be taking as they're entering, say junior and senior year. So we have the engineering pathway, law and government, nursing, life science, business, and liberal arts, and I'll go through each one. So the first one's the engineering science pathway. In this pathway, you definitely want to be taking calculus your senior year. So if you look at the math pathway, there's one that starts with Algebra 1 and one starts with geometry. Some students start in at Algebra 1, and you can't make it to calculus if you start in Algebra 1 freshman year. So you go Algebra 1, geometry, Algebra 2, pre-calc. So that's something to think about if you're serious about an engineering program. The more competitive the program, the more they're going to want to see you be taking calculus your senior year, not pre-calc. Now again, it doesn't prevent you from being an engineer and getting into a program, but as you talk about more competitive programs, these things matter more. So it's something to think about if your son or daughter is really interested in that career field. They might want to think of ways where they can take an additional course over the summer to move along in the sequence so they can take calculus in their senior year. You also want to focus in on science. Physics is a must if you're going to go into engineering. AP chemistry and AP physics are those concrete sciences that are really important for anyone that's interested in that. And then we have a whole host of electives you can take in computer science, AP level, or just regular classes, environmental engineering, other science classes that you could take to supplement your schedule as well. If you're going into law and government or politics or something related to that, the emphasis is more on the humanities. So it's more of those courses where you're doing a lot of reading. So the histories and the English are those. So we have the AP language and AP Lits in English. You can even take more than one seminar. You can take more than 2 seminars in our English, our seniors. Some of our seniors that are really interested in English and are majoring in something in the humanities will take 3 or sometimes 4 seminars. So they're kind of doubling up on English in essence. So you could do that. We have a lot of history AP courses that you can take, AP Psych, AP Government and Politics. We have a US government course. It's a full year course as well. Psychology and sociology are also good courses. So there's a lot of opportunities there to explore the law and government pathway. But again, you want to focus in on more of the humanities courses. And a lot of us students are interested in physical therapy now, occupational therapy. Nursing has been popular for quite some time now as a major. So there's a lot of students in that, interested in that pathway. And again, you're again talking more science and math, but it's a little bit different. So the math, it's not so important that you get to calculus for the life sciences. It's more important that you show rigor, but a lot of colleges, and 5 years ago, a lot of it was you did need to get to calculus, but it's kind of shifted. So a lot of the colleges want to see you take stats in your senior year, or prefer it, that you take a statistics course rather than calculus. AP Bio is a real good course to take. Anyone going into nursing should be taking physics. It's pretty much a requirement at competitive nursing programs that you take physics. It's not a requirement at all programs, but if you're interested in nursing, you better be taking physics. Anatomy and physiology is obviously a great course to get experience there. And then we have our electives as well. And then there's the business pathway, so someone that might be interested in business in general or specific. If you're interested in business, one thing to know that math is something that they look at a lot in business programs. So they want to see you advance through the math sequence as far as you can, not to the level of an engineering program, but it's certainly important for business programs to see what you can do in math. Another class or sequence that might be important in business that you might not think about is foreign language. So when you're talking about global marketing or just business on a global sense or international business, having that experience with a foreign language is starting to become more and more important. So it's something to consider depending on what your interests are. And then there's kind of more general classes like AP Psychology and AP Government that could be good as well. And we have a lot of business electives to choose from. So we have Exploring Business and Intro to Economics for freshmen and sophomores, accounting starting sophomore year, and then junior and senior year, financial literacy, Intro to Marketing, Economics 2. And then we have a Deca program. The name of the course is Strategic Marketing and Entrepreneurship. A lot of the students in there in our Deca program, which is basically, it's a club and it's you know, you don't have to be going to major for business, but a lot of the students in that club and in that class are going to be business majors and are really into the business aspect of it. And it's a really hands-on class, and it's the kids really enjoy that. And so that's a great class to take if you're going down the business pathway. And lastly, there's the liberal arts pathway. So reality is what it is that half the students don't know what they want to do, and they probably won't know until, you know, they get to college. So thinking about that in high school can be daunting. So if you really don't know, that's okay. I always tell the students it's okay not to know, but it's not okay not to be trying to figure it out. And so when we do our seminars with the kids, you know, especially freshman and sophomore year, we spend a lot of time on career exploration, and then junior and senior year is obviously more for post-secondary college planning focus, but we always encourage them to be trying to figure out what they want to do and taking those assessments and exploring and then figuring it out. So students that just want to take a rigorous course load, but they don't know, they don't want to focus in on a certain pathway, that's totally fine. So you can take your standard courses, so it's all about how many core courses you take. You want to take at least 3 or 4 core courses in each of the disciplines, and then you can, depending on where your interests may be, you could try an AP or 2 in those areas. AP Psychology is a great broad AP class to take. Marine Biology is a pretty broad science to take in your senior year. And obviously math would be in that sequence, and in English you have AP and other options with those seminars too. And with that, I will bring it over to Mr. Talbot again.
Thank you, Mr. Mibach. So, as I said, that program of studies is on our website, okay, and if I could impart one piece of advice to you, and I'm going to try to impart a couple pieces of advice, but one really important piece of advice is for you to really give that program of studies a good read. It explains several things there, not only about selecting courses, but all that pathway conversations, all the scope and sequences are all in there. So every slide he just went through is there. It's really important for us to support our students in creating a program of studies that is going to lead to success. And I'm going to probably use that phrase quite a few times during the course of this portion of the presentation, right? Creating a program of studies that will lead to success for our students. So the teachers right now are currently making recommendations for your child for next year. That window opened on the 13th of February, that was on Monday, and it's going to close on March 1st. That's the Wednesday after vacation. And so during that time, they are making an honest and earnest assessment of what they feel your child can do based on the 5 or so months that they've had them in class. We're almost 3/4 of the way through the year right now. So the people who are making these recommendations are folks who I think have a really good idea of your students' potential. But they have to balance that potential with what's actually happening right now. Okay, what's actually been being done. And so those recommendations are done with earnestness, and for some of our teachers, it's very painstaking. They put a lot of time and effort into that, and I certainly am appreciative of that. Once the window closes for recommendations, it opens up for students and families then to go into the portal and make their course selections. I put down in the slide here that about 4 p.m. on March 1st is when it'll be open to parents, okay? And you then have those 8 days or those 7 days to go through there and make a selection and build a program of studies for your children. Now, to do so, you must go through PowerSchool, through your students' portal on PowerSchool. They should have their login information right now. In fact, just anecdotally, by watching kids on their cell phones during the course of the day, they are on PowerSchool, sometimes maybe too much for my liking, and that's a different conversation. It's a different presentation. I think they're checking their grades too often. If you do not have, or your child does not have login information to PowerSchool, please contact your child's guidance counselor, and we'll help you get logged in. But you have to go through the student portal to do that. Now, there is a handout on the way in that explains actually how you navigate PowerSchool to select those courses. I'm sure most of you know how to do it because we've been doing it on PowerSchool for a couple of years, but if you need a tutorial on that, please feel free to grab that handout on the table on the way out, okay? Students will have the ability to select courses at the level for which they have been recommended by the teachers, okay? They'll also have the opportunity to select electives at that point. Now, students must select between 24 and 28 credits, okay? So if you do some quick math, our full-year core courses are worth 4 credits, okay? And then our half-year courses are worth 2 credits apiece. So that if you're taking, you know, English, math, science, social studies, and a foreign language, okay, well, that's 20 credits right there. And then if they take 2 elective courses to fill out their schedule, well, they're at 24 credits, and that's how they get there, and that's perfect. Some of them may take the big 5 and maybe take another full-year course because that's an area of interest for them. And so, well, then right there, they're at 24 credits, and if it, with a elective-based course, well, there's 26. Okay, there are various ways to get in that target area, but 24 to 28 credits is what we require our students to take. Now, we do allow students to select a singular study hall per semester 1 so that they can still take 6 courses and have 24 to 28 credits and then take a study hall for which no credit is assigned, understandably so. But they can still take a study hall and still meet that window of 24 to 28 credits, okay? Students will also be prompted to select alternate courses in case they don't get their primary choice. And that's important that they do that so that if a class does fill up, they're in a secondary selection that is of interest to them. All right? Now, when selecting a study hall, those are semester-based courses. So that on the primary choice, if you're, as a family, you decide that study hall, you want that embedded in the schedule, both semesters, you'll have to select a study hall as an alternative option there. Okay, and what will happen is the guidance counselor will then know that you want 1 each semester. We would never give 2 in 1 semester, never, okay? 1 each semester, spread it out so that your student has that time during the day to get some work done. So as I said earlier, students will have the ability to select courses at the level for which they've been recommended. And so naturally, there'll become a time where a parent disagrees with that level recommendation and wants to maybe override. And so there's a process for that, an override process, okay? And we welcome parents to pursue that. The first step in the override process is to contact the recommending teacher. That's really where that conversation should happen, okay? So please, I think it's important that we really follow that process. If we start at the top and want to talk to Mr. Meerbach or me or even the guidance counselor first, those conversations are not as helpful because really it needs to start at the ground level. All right, talk to the teacher, find out why they made that recommendation, express your thoughts, and perhaps a change gets made at that point, or perhaps a change is made with your thinking, and you elect to stay in that level that was recommended originally, okay? But at the end of that conversation, if we still have some disagreement, well, that's when you want to pursue the next step in the override process, and that is to obtain an override form, and that lives in the guidance office. So your child will have to go to the guidance office, speak to the guidance counselor, which is where that next communication should really happen, express their concerns about the level, bring that form home to the parents, and that's where you get to fill that form out, okay? And we return that form to guidance, and that's when it gets delivered to the appropriate content supervisor. And the content supervisor then will certainly speak with the family, certainly speak with the recommending teacher, but he or she will make that decision. So I ask you, please, if you are considering overriding a level recommendation, that you follow that process. It works. It's an appropriate process, certainly. We by no means do we discourage the override process from being followed. We welcome it. We think it's a good process, and we oftentimes arrive at a common ground there. We ask that all those override forms are in by May 1st of this year. And the reason why we try to hold hard and fast to that deadline is that we want to have enough time to complete a schedule for every child in the building before the summer vacation. And so if we have everything squared away by May 1st, from that point forward, we then build a schedule, all right, with those remaining 6 weeks or so, and then every child goes home for the summer vacation, knowing what classes they are taking next year. All right, that's the reason for the May 1st deadline. All right, so I just want to call your attention to that. And so I ask you once again to make sure that we are doing the work on the front end, and that's this right here. This is the front end. So that if we do the work on the front end, our chances of developing a successful program of studies go up. They go through the roof, all right? Trying to create a program of studies on the back end in September that's successful is much more challenging. So please make sure that we are doing what we can. Read that program of studies, have your child talk to the teacher, have your child talk to the guidance counselor. Let's please find a balance between challenging our students but yet creating a program of studies that's not going to overwhelm them, that's going to lead to success. We do want our kids to challenge themselves. I know that you do, we do. We don't want kids being complacent. But when we challenge ourselves, let's do a realistic self-assessment, and let's find something that's going to fit our children's learning style and our children's abilities, okay? I think the counselors play a really important role in that. Because once we commit to a schedule, once we develop a schedule, this process right here, this course selection process that we're doing right now in the spring, we depend upon people doing that with earnestness because so many things are dependent upon it, right? So we build the entire master schedule based on what our kids pick right now. And so that if 8 kids sign up for AP Spanish, we may not run that with 8 kids. But if 10 kids sign up for it, well, then we may run it, and we may dedicate a full-time teaching block to that class because 10 kids signed up for it. Come September, if 3 kids want to drop it because they really didn't, think about it enough, and now we're down to 7 kids, well, we would not have run that class in June if it had 7 kids. So those kind of changes are really difficult to accommodate. And that's what I say when I mean, let's do a work on the front end. Because what's happening on the front end determines so many things. How many sections of each class we run? How many AP bios do we need? Right? How many world history 2s do we need? Those questions are answered based on what's happening right now. And if we have people who perhaps did not put the time in on the front end and want to make changes on the back end, there are too many pieces that are impacted by that. Class size is determined by what's happening right now. Teacher load and equity is determined by what's happening right now. And so Mr. Mirbach, after May 1st, one of his responsibilities is to make sure that we try to balance those classes as best as we can in terms of class size. So that if one AP Bio class has got 12 kids in it and one has 25, well, we try to make movement so that we have 17 and 17. Okay, now that's not always possible. We do those things now. And that's why it's so important that everyone understands the seriousness of proper course selection. Okay, changes in September are really difficult to accommodate. Now, that does not mean we don't change schedules. Okay, I want everyone to know that we have the students' best interests in mind and we want them to be successful. And so between June, when your child gets his or her schedule, and up to the last day of the summer vacation, we will do our best to accommodate all reasonable requests for change. Our guidance counselors are in 5 days after the school year is over, and they're in 5 days before it begins. And really, those 10 days, that's when a lot of schedule changes happen. I'm rethinking this is not what I really thought, I want to be sure about this. And so we can do it then within reason. We certainly do it then, okay? But once the first day of school starts, as I've explained already, things kind of get a little bit complicated. And so we really change schedules in September, really based on the placement review process. And that's a different kind of a conversation than I've changed my mind. Because what the placement review process does in 2 phases is it helps us identify kids who are misplaced, who, despite their best efforts, are misplaced. And if that's the case, we certainly don't want to hold kids in there and lead to a very difficult year. The first phase of that review process, for placement review, happens the day that progress reports grades close, that day. Okay, we send out email to our teachers, look at your roster, look at your grades, start thinking about kids who we think may be misplaced. And if they are, let's make moves now so that we can get them in another class before too much time in the year goes on. We do the same thing at the end of the first quarter. The day grades close, we start the second phase of that placement review. And any kids who, at progress report time, maybe wanted to stick it out, let me just give it a little bit more, and then they do that, and then it's not working at that time, we will make the move. Okay, and we make the move When we do that review process and teachers and students and content supervisors and administrators agree that despite this student's best efforts, he or she is not succeeding. They are giving it everything they have, which is a different conversation than a kid who was just shut down. I'm not trying anymore. It's a different conversation. So when we talk about every effort, we're talking about being earnest, right? We're talking about turning in our assignments promptly and consistently. We're talking about getting extra help on a consistent basis. And once we all agree it's happening, we will absolutely make the change at that point because it's in the best interest of kids. But what I'm asking you to understand is, I don't like that teacher anymore, or my friends aren't in that class, or I didn't do my summer reading work, and so therefore please change my schedule. These are things that are really hard for us to accommodate for the reasons I've mentioned earlier. And so again, my message is, and I'm being repetitive, I know that, but it's for emphasis. Let's do the work on the front end. Let's talk to our kids now. Let's read the program of studies. Let's talk to our teachers and our guidance counselors, and let's develop a program of studies that will lead to success for our kids. Okay? So, as I said earlier, our content supervisors are in the science wing right now, and they certainly are waiting for you as the 8th grade parents are kind of trickling out. And they certainly will be happy to answer any of your in-depth questions. But I'm also, and Mr. Mirbach is also right now, we're willing to open the floor up for any questions that perhaps of something we covered here that you'd like to have a bit more of an explanation of. Yes, ma'am. Yes, we go through that process. Yes, we do. Correct. So if they're recommending honors and you want to go down to CP, you would have to go through that process again. Correct. Yep.
Gym requirement, what year is the athletic sport ticket?
10th grade-ish.
Yeah, ninth grade gym is required, and then 10 through 12 is when, and to be fully honest, gym is going to be required for all students to select, and we're going to determine the parameters of the waiver process. I don't know if it's going to be the same as it has been in the past. So, in the past, if you played a sport, you could waive out a gym. I'm not sure how that's going to play out exactly, but
So if they're signed up for gym and if they do a sport, they might be able to do something like a study hall or
Another elective, sure. Yep. They would have to go through the waiver process, right, because it is state law to do PE, but we do allow waivers to be issued for various reasons. So, correct. Right now, that's as it stands right now, it is 10th grade, 10 through 12 right now, yeah.
And then last question, summer classes, is there a list of them on the website of what might be available?
For summer work, you mean, or for?
You mentioned summer work for taking like gymnastics.
Yep. So that stuff is not on the website yet. It will be soon, and that's a great question to ask the specific supervisors when if you want to drill down a little bit, because each one is different, certainly. And depending on what course it is, the amount of work is different. Okay? But that is, absolutely, we do post that on the website for access all throughout the summer. Okay? Yes, ma'am. It will happen quick enough. We're going to convene a committee sometime this spring to talk about PE waivers and how we want that looking going forward. All right, so you're right. It is a can of worms. It's sticky. It's sticky. I know. Yes, ma'am. I mean, you can take both, right? So,
sign up for a gym and take a study as well. So it's nothing stopping you from doing both.
Well, if you sign up for PE, you lose the chance to take economics, accounting. I'd rather a student sign up.
So if you pick,
Sign up for gym and for both study until he can.
if you pick those courses as an alternate, then we're going to get you into that course if it fits. So you're not going to lose that opportunity if you pick that as an alternate. So if you didn't pick it as an alternate, then that'd be different. But you have an
It
opportunity
is,
to
yep.
pick alternate courses. So I don't think anyone's going to lose any opportunity for any elective because we require 3 alternates to be selected. So students should be selecting 3 alternate classes. And if they come out of gym because select up to 3 alternate classes, so everyone selects a gym, and everyone selects 3 alternate classes, and if you waive out of the gym, if the waiver is granted in April, then we'll get you in one of those offices.
I would certainly anticipate, I'm being very careful because of the can of worms. Waivers for PE are going to be less frequent moving forward and not more frequent, I think. State law requires that they take it, and we created some waiver processes based on staffing. We've added to our PE department, so we have more staff and we have the ability to handle more students for that very important part of the curriculum. I think it's a safe bet to plan on your child taking the requirement, the state requirements of PE, and if you look at it that way there, where we need to take PE here and meet that requirement and then schedule around that, I think that would be the safe bet for everybody. That's what I think. Correct. Correct. I'm treading carefully. I'm treading lightly. Yeah. Go ahead, sir. Yep. Okay. So the waiver is only issued at when it's time to do your transcript audit and how many requirements you've met, right, for graduation. So you should be speaking with your guidance counselor about what your plan is for that, but we wouldn't talk about a waiver in the 9th grade for a student, okay? We would talk about that as a student advances. Because you still have plenty of time to meet the requirements for graduation for PE. As a sophomore, you've got plenty of time. You have 6 semesters left, right? So you have plenty of time, okay, to meet that requirement.
Apparently he was told that he didn't need it.
In my first program of studies freshman year, it said that I didn't have to take it after freshman year.
That was last year you're talking about?
When he was registered for classes for this year.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. These are all things that have to come out. We'll have to figure something out for that, yep, for sure. Yes, ma'am?
Just to be clear, in the past, if you wanted to register for a study hall, you actually, there was no place you could do it.
Correct.
But now there will be.
Correct. Yep. Yep. Correct. Yes, ma'am?
But I have a question about the senior project.
Okay.
We have a student who's taking several AP classes. Is that like a dangerous thing to try to, I'm not familiar with what's required to have AP classes. I've had older children, but the senior project was never in place here when my older children were here.
Sure.
So those senior projects sometimes require the child to be outside the building.
Correct. Yep.
So is that sometimes, can that get in the way of maybe like an AP class that they could be missing, and how does that work?
So it can get in the way. So students who are involved in the AP classes have to really think about that with care, because those requirements aren't going to go away. They're still required to sit for that test. Okay, so a lot of our students will come back to school for the AP class. Okay, so if they're taking 3 of them, it makes it really challenging to then be able to have enough time to be in the field doing their senior project. So that is a decision that students in that situation will have to make. Okay, we met with them today, in fact, the seniors today, and we talked about this very thing today with them for the current seniors. Oh, you're welcome. So thank you very much. We appreciate that. And so at this time, if you are interested in hearing the AP presentation, which will be happening in a few moments, please feel free to stick around or stretch your legs and come back in. About 10 minutes or so, we'd probably start that, maybe a little bit less, right? But otherwise, you are free to head down to the science wing and meet with those content supervisors based on their room locations, which again are on the handout outside on the table, okay? Thank you all very much. Have a great night. Thank you.